My name is Polly Higgins. I'm here this evening to speak about ecocide law and also my latest book called I Dare You to Be Great. Ecocide is a word that in fact has been around since the 1970s. What I've done is I've given it legal definition. So I've proposed a wording that has huge implications for not just criminal but civil law. And what I'm doing is I'm criminalising, the wording criminalises extensive damage, destruction to a loss of ecosystems, but it also creates a legal duty of care to put the health and well-being, if you like, of people and planet first over and above profit. So it's an accountability mechanism. By putting in place an international crime of ecocide, what it does is it closes the door to significant harm, and it closes the door to decision making at the very top end that can perpetuate significant harm, sometimes non-intentionally. But what it does is it fundamentally reframes the decision-making process at the very top end, be it in a corporation, at a political level, or financial level for that matter, to ensure that, first off, you have to examine whether or not the project or the activity or what you intend to finance is going to cause mass damage and destruction. And if it is, then it's a no-go zone.
Polly Higgins.
Events like this are very important because it gives me an opportunity to demystify law, if you like. Often there are fundamental misunderstandings about law, and law itself is really not that complicated. It can be complex, but it's not that complicated. It's just lawyers who make it complicated. But if you pare it down to its essence, you can ask a few key fundamental questions. For instance, whose interests are being protected here, people and planet or the polluter? And when you look at permits to pollute, for instance, then you know that it's not people and planets that are being protected. You're actually giving permission to people to pollute. And so we have a huge problem then where we've accepted pollution and harm to be a normative. So what I'm doing is I'm actually shining a light on that and saying, no, there's missing law here. Because at the moment, when significant harm plays out, we cannot prosecute. You cannot go in there and say this is a crime in law. You can morally, but it hasn't translated yet into the legal spectrum. And in a way, what's happening here is law is just playing catch up with where society is going. Society is really waking up to the huge amount of harm and damage that's playing out every day. I realised a few years ago that to put in place a law of ecocide really calls upon us to do something great. It's not about tweaking at the edges, it's not about rearranging the deck chairs while the Titanic sinks. It's actually fundamentally turning the Titanic around and turning it around on a pinhead. And that is really what ecocide law does. It stops that vast tsunami, if you like, of huge destruction that's almost engulfing us in a huge way. So I Dare You to Be Great is really an invitation to each and every one of us to stand up and speak out and be a voice for the earth, and to be in service to something greater than the self. I genuinely believe there's something bigger at play here, and that we each have the potential to live out our purpose in our lives, and we each have a role to play in this. It's not just a top-down thing. In fact, if anything, it's very much about how we engage from the grassroots, how we build those foundations that support, create the enabling conditions from the ground upwards. And this is absolutely crucial because it's also about self-empowerment, how we empower ourselves to stand up and speak out and feel safe in doing that as well. And to do that, that's about examining another type of ecocide, an ecocide that isn't actually something we can legislate. We can't write laws for humanity about it, or rather, I don't think it would be appropriate to do so. And this is about our inner ecocides. What are our patterns of harm, significant harm, that stop us from experiencing our greatness within our lives? And how can we fast track that and break those patterns of harm within ourselves? So it's a process of deeper inquiry, if you like. And in a way, it's that mirroring what's happening in the outer world. Actually, it's a reflection of societally what's happening within our inner worlds and how we are complicit and can allow patterns of harm to play out within us that sometimes we aren't even aware of until we start asking ourselves some deeper questions. In a way, when we start to face those patterns of harm, we let go of our own fears. And when we become fearless, and we see it in terms of being in service to something greater than the self, we have the capacity to actually meet that greatness and explore what that might be in our lives. And of course, that's a lifetime inquiry as well. You know, it's not something that by Thursday you're great, sadly.